At InDigital, we know that public safety professionals hold themselves to a high standard. In fact, standard doesn't do it justice. In over 25 years working alongside you, carrying millions of calls over our IP networks, your dedication has inspired us. That's why our ESI Net goes beyond industry standards, not only I3 compliant, but designed to adapt to future development for a network you can count on when it matters most. Learn more at indigital.net.
Here in Greenville County, we have 8 different places where a 911 call can be answered.
It is the largest county in South Carolina. It's a challenge.
The type of information that a telecommunicator gets from Radius Plus is location-based technology. You can see where the caller is, if they have a medical issue, if they speak a different language. They're immediately able to text to that caller in their native language. It reduces response times because it immediately gets first responders where they need to be.
Carbine, it's multimedia. You can get text, translate to whatever language, getting away with the legacy equipment and going into a cloud-based solution.
It's the first time in U.S. history that we have an EZNet through cloud-native call handling.
As a police officer, to have the victim go video, that's unheard of.
You're getting upgrades every month, not every year.
To schedule your free Carbine demo, please visit carbine.com/WTT.
If Within the Trenches has ever taught you something, open your eyes to what it is like to be a 911 dispatcher, or has inspired you to become one, then help support us and join our Patreon. Get exclusive bonus content, one-of-a-kind swag, discounts on merchandise, ad-free early access to new episodes, and much more. To join, please visit patreon.com/WTT podcast. And if you're an industry partner, we have something for you as well. And now, for the show.
This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned.
Welcome to Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them.
Hey, what's going on? This is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and this is Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them. This is going to be episode 447. Damn, we are getting up there. You know, I had a joke actually that I was going to pull this past April Fool's, and I was going to say that, you know, once I hit episode 500 that I was going to be done, but then I let a couple friends know about what I was going to do, and they're like, hell no, son, don't do that, because people are going to be pissed off. And I ended up posting just a graphic that said what it was going to be, but in the caption I said it was just a joke. But no one ever reads the caption. Yeah, it was an interesting response. I mean, it was cool. But I made a few people mad. They're like, man, you're a dick. I was like, sorry, I was just playing. Anyway, we're getting up there, and it is awesome. It has been really, really good. So thank you all for listening, watching, sharing, supporting, all that good stuff. I appreciate it more than you know. This episode is sponsored by InDigital, Rapid Deploy, as well as Carbine, and a big shout out to patrons. As always, thank you for everything. We've got a bunch of extra perks for patrons, and a shout out to Tina B for becoming a new patron. And she's at the top tier, so she's going to get a t-shirt and a bunch of swag and other things, discounts to the store. So there's a lot of stuff that comes with that, as well as access to the Singing Badly in My Car episodes. Yeah, they're pretty interesting. But they're a lot of fun to make. It just takes a long time to edit it with 3 different cameras, but it's still a good time. I am fresh back from the National NINA Conference, which was in Louisville, Kentucky, and that was an excellent time. Thank you all for stopping by booth 123 to not only see myself, but my good friend Sarah Weston of 911 Wonder Women, Inc. She's the executive director and founder of that amazing nonprofit. We were there just doing a bunch of stuff, meeting with people, and then also we both had a bunch of different sessions. And also thank you to all of you for going to Imagine listening, and it was a very powerful session as always. So thank you so very much. And as always, a shout out to Nina. We have had basically a partnership since 2013, and it has been awesome ever since. So thank you so much for that. I am super excited today because finally we are getting to do this episode, and this is going to be a good time. I've been looking forward to finding out more about my guest, as well as what she's working on with the Raspy Dispatcher. So my guest today is Ashley. She's the founder of the Raspy Dispatcher, and she's also a dispatcher out of California.
Hello.
Yo, what is going on?
What is up?
I'm sure. So being in California, I'm sure it's pretty warm, and nice and everything. And it's warm over here and nice as well. But the room that I'm currently in, holy hell. It's like the devil farted in here, man. Not that it stinks. I'm not going to say that. Yeah, I know. not that it stinks. It's just super hot in here. So it's okay. So it's 91 outside right now. But for whatever reason, this house that I'm in, the AC unit, I don't think is big enough for this place, because I'm on the.
You just gotta turn your heat down. You're just making it too hot in there.
Maybe. Yeah. It's crazy because there's a vent that's right here, and sometimes I can feel the air come out. Sometimes. But today. No. Today it is hot.
Yeah, we're spoiled out here in the Bay. We got that cool breeze right off the water. I mean, we're complaining at like 60, 70. So, we're thin skinned out here. So we're really good.
That is beautiful weather. Yeah, I would be out there in just a shirt and t-shirts. Oh, look at that. I can't even talk. A t-shirt and shorts. That's how hot it is in here. I can't even think. I can't talk.
We gotta start fire. Kill 3.
I know. Yeah. See, you've got the cool air from the Bay over there. Me looking to the left over here, there's a cornfield. So there's not.
Oh.
I mean,
I'm very familiar with cornfields. I went to school in Iowa, so I've had some time in some cornfields.
There you go. Okay, well, you know what I'm talking about then.
I do.
Well, I am excited to have you here and learn more about you and everything. I've been watching on social media and stuff. I see all these videos that you got going out and everything, especially for like the critical testing and stuff. Mm-hmm. That's one that at my center we didn't have to take, but I know there's a lot of places that take it and everything. And it's awesome that you're building this content for people to be able to study and learn more. Mm-hmm. And also, I think one of the good things, and we'll get into this a lot more later on in this episode, but I think one of the best things is you're putting this information out there, and it allows folks to kind of test drive it as well, right? Mm-hmm. In a way, and see if it's something that they really want to do. And that's definitely what we need, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, half the battle of I think getting through a test is having an understanding of what it is and getting rid of that anxiety of just not knowing what you're walking into. And I think bare minimum, that's what these videos are doing for folks. It's giving them foundational understanding of, I'm not going to walk in here and be blindsided,
Yes, definitely. Because I think we've all probably seen a lot of people who have, sent messages or made posts on some of the private groups, whether it be on Facebook or even tweeting some stuff out sometimes saying, I'm getting ready to do this test. I'm kind of freaking out. I don't know what to do. Mm-hmm. And, a lot of times people do add comments saying, well, this is what you should do, or think about this. But then there's, the other jerk offs that'll send a message and say, just run. Like, don't come over here. Don't work where we're working. Like, dude, why? Why would you say that?
We need more dispatchers. We need more dispatchers.
That's so crazy, man. So for you, let's dig into your story here. How did you get started in public safety to begin with?
Yeah, so I actually was fortunate. I went to school on a basketball scholarship, so I was able to get my, undergrad and my master's degree, both in criminal justice. It's kind of a weird kid. Always knew I wanted to go into the field, just didn't know what it would look like. And after graduating, I kind of stumbled into social work, did that for a bit, so I could continue coaching. I was still very much involved in basketball. and kind of wanted to still focus on that. And then at some point, I was coaching at the junior college level, and I was just like, I should probably like use these degrees I got and like see what that's about,
Yeah.
and kind of get my foot in there. And I applied for a bunch of things, and dispatch is kind of the first thing that hit. So it was more of a graceful stumble how I got into dispatch, rather than being strictly intentional.
Hmm.
And what I found to be extremely interesting, and one of the main reasons kind of the Raspy Dispatcher was born, was I had all of this education in criminal justice, undergrad, graduate. Um, and during that time, no one ever talked about dispatch. I mean, I even was deep dived into like old textbooks, looked, I was like, is it anywhere? And I couldn't find any notes, any mention in regards to dispatch as a career, as a function of the emergency response, network, even outside of criminal justice.
Hmm.
And I just thought that was such a disservice after going through my academy and getting into the field, especially when there's such a shortage in dispatch, that we should be talking about this more, and especially in higher education and in avenues where we're trying to get people to go into careers,
Right. Yeah. No, you're definitely correct. Like when I started, oh man, back in
Oh.
2001, when I started
Oh.
back in 2001, like
Mhm.
I was the same way. I didn't have a lot of experience except for like TV shows that I
Mhm.
watched, growing up, especially Rescue 911. William Shatner was on that
Mhm.
one, and that show, it was always exciting, to watch that and see all of the stuff that was happening, these calls that are coming in. But every single episode at the very end, well, almost everyone at the end,
Mhm.
they had, the callers meeting with dispatch and some of the others. And I thought, oh, so that's how it works. But then I got into
Mhm.
dispatch. I was like, no, that's not how it works. Like, I haven't met anyone.
Mhm. Hello?
Not, yeah, not every call has a good ending like those. And so yeah, so it was definitely different. Now, when you think about it, do you ever go back and think, kind of like what I said, if there was something on TV that you saw, or were there other family members, or just the fact that you saw, let's just say, an emergency vehicle go by, and you thought, oh man, that just seems really cool. Because you said early on, from an early age, you kind of had it in you that you wanted to get into some sort of public safety.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I thought for a long time that I would be patrol.
Hmm.
That I wanted to go work with kids, juveniles, probation, something like that. Um, and then when dispatch came along and I just started learning about all the things that the dispatcher is involved with and the ability to really impact a situation before anyone even gets on scene.
Hmm.
I found a lot of value in that, like that we have big responsibility and big power to escalate or de-escalate and create good situations for those who are going to scenes. Um, and after being able to have that impact with at my old agency was such a high call volume and high trauma call volume. Um, I don't think I could see myself doing anything else,
It gets in the blood, right?
Yeah, no, straight up. Yeah, no, it's
Yeah,
like
it's
awesome.
it's it's very interesting, because when I first started out, even before that, I had been told, your cousin's husband knows the chief of police, and I was like, oh, good for them. I was like, what are you trying to tell me? And they said, well,
I
they
got a
were,
warrant?
yeah, I know, yeah. Do I need to run?
Right? Coming over for dinner? Like what?
Yeah, they were just trying to tell me that they were looking for dispatchers, and I remember thinking back, like, I have no idea. I said, all
Mhm,
I know is that they answer the phone. Like, what
mhm,
else is there to it? So I went and tried it out, and it quickly got into my blood, and there was really nothing else that I wanted to do. Like, even though I went to school and I ended up getting 3 degrees while I was in dispatch, doing everything online, I still wanted to do everything around public safety, because that was my love. But before that, like coming out of high school, I had retail management experience and all that stuff. If someone would have told me back then that I would be doing what I'm doing now and having to do with dispatch, public safety, like all that stuff, I'd be like, hell no. Like,
Yeah.
no
Yeah,
way.
for sure. And I mean, I think that's for me after going through school and like, trying to get a job after my degree and stuff, and just realizing that the best thing, I think one of the best things about dispatch is it's entry level. And,
Yes.
you could go in with no training and have a career with good benefits, with, good retirement. And if you get in young enough, and I think that's the biggest thing, um, with it is that if I would have known sooner that I could be in this role, making good money and have opportunities to go to school online, I would have. I would have done those things sooner so I could have put myself in better financial situations sooner, and I think that's one thing we're looking for as well as people is, a little bit of security. And I think this job, this role, it's rewarding. And then it also provides that security. If you're looking to start a family, if you're looking to go continue on to school, I think it creates a good environment to pursue those things while being in a very productive career.
Yeah, it's also that it's hard. You can't get bored there, I guess is what I'll just say it that way. There's no way to get bored, right?
you
Because
know,
there's
yeah, no,
the
seriously.
the incident types will be the same, but the
Mhm.
situations within each one of those incident types are different and
Yeah.
always different. And I've said it many times. I'll say it again, and I'll always say it. That moment when you think you've taken the craziest call or the most outrageous or the funniest, the dispatch gods are like, here, check this one out. And you're like, what?
There is no other profession where you could like walk back to your desk from using the restroom and hear a coworker go like, "Oh, so are their pants still on?" And you're
Yeah.
just like, "I don't know what's happening over there, but I'm about to sit here and I'm about to get someone else calling and giving me the rest of the story." Because I mean, you just never know. You
Yeah,
never
yeah.
know.
Yeah, you can't make a lot of that stuff up, even when
Mm-mm.
it sounds so crazy.
Yeah, no, it's
We
wild.
you got to stay, professional. It's all priority one. Like everything, you got
Mm,
to go and go until at the end, if we get a chance to find out what happened. Usually, if
mhm.
it's something pretty outrageous, an officer or somebody will call back and be like, "Dude,
Yeah.
you."
Walks in, can't even call you on the recorded
Right?
line. We need to
Yeah,
talk in
yeah,
person.
exactly. Yeah, no recorded line. They end up calling in. Oh my gosh, yeah, it is definitely an interesting one. But so when you got started though, before you got in there and started training and everything, did you get a chance to do like a sit along for a couple hours to see what everything
Yeah.
looked like? And
Yeah, I did. I came in, I did a sit along,
Mhm.
and I think it was a random like Monday night. I dispatched out in Sacramento originally.
Mhm.
And even for a Monday, I mean it was popping, like we were going call to call for like 2 hours. And I sat with a really, really, really good dispatcher, very even keel, very good at their job, never fluctuated. I mean, I the whole time I'd worked with them, I don't think I've ever heard them raise their voice at all. They were just really good at keeping it level and understanding that this person is obviously having a bad day. That's why they're calling it me at work. No one calls me at work to tell me, everything's fine. So
Right.
um, after sitting with them and experiencing the way they did the job, I was like, oh, I could totally do this. Like this is awesome. Like this person is impacting someone positively, consistently. Like it can be done um, without being too flustered all the time. So that sit along experience did really motivate me. Like, okay, I should keep going. I should keep pursuing this.
That's awesome, especially because there was actually stuff that was going on. Because I remember
Yeah.
being in dispatch and having people come in for a sit along, and we would just be there, and I would think, "Are you serious right now?" Like we were busy as hell just a few minutes ago, and
Mhm.
now there's nothing.
Right.
And the person is just sitting there thinking, oh, this is what you guys do. And I remember one
Right.
person saying, dude, I could do this. Like you guys are just kind of chilling, waiting for things to happen. I'm like, no, this is not what dispatch is really like, man.
Yeah,
Like
no, it's like there's 4 fires, you're trying to catch things, and it's just everything's
Right.
dropping.
Yeah, especially if it's like going into shift change from, the mornings to, to mids or
Shift
whatever,
change.
going into
Yeah.
night shift. Sometimes it feels like people were just waiting. They were holding it in at work until they got home and then start
hmm
calling us. We're like, okay,
It's like,
we'll get you
hello,
help.
is anybody available to respond? We need to bring the cars out, guys. I know we're
Yes.
shift change, but let's go. I got 4
Yeah.
priorities pending.
Oh, right. Especially if you're the one who's sitting at radios and you're trying to get
Mhm.
it out there. Oh man. I
Mhm.
remember one time someone was like, just tone it out because they're not paying attention and it's shift
Yeah,
change. So just tone it. And
yeah.
it wasn't a call that needed to be toned by any means, but it was still important enough that we needed to get somebody over there.
Yeah,
It just
yeah.
wasn't, that priority one that we needed to tone something out for it. But I remember the person that I was there with, they toned it and they sent a message, or maybe someone called and they're like, why did you tone that? Or like, because you guys weren't paying attention. We needed to get your attention. Like, oh, fair
Because
enough. Okay.
I'm dispatch. I make the
Yeah.
rules.
Yeah,
I choose when
exactly.
I want to tone.
Damn right. Yeah. Yeah. They were just like, all right, right on, right on. Like, okay, good. So you get in there, you've done the sit along and everything. Kind of describe what it is that you're looking at. So you're there just so that those who are listening right now, because of course every dispatch center is different. So
Mhm.
how many people are working on the floor at a time, and what do you see in front of you? Are there multiple screens, multiple mice, keyboards? What do you see?
Yeah, so I walk in to the comm center, and I think it's huge. First of all, there's at least anywhere from 8 to 10 call takers on the floor, and then the other side of the room is our radio side, and that we were 4 channels, 6 districts when I worked at that agency, and then there was a radio relief that would answer non-emergency calls, and then if something popped off on a channel, would support that person's channel, going over the hotline, asking for assistance from other agencies, um, things like that. Just double listening to any traffic, especially if there's a pursuit or something high priority. Um, then we also had 2 other designated spots that worked just requests, callbacks from officers, tows, anything like that. They would handle from the radio side, and then a tech desk where they would deal with any text to 911s, shot spotter activations, email correspondence, helicopter activity. They would kind of do all that. So in
Wow.
addition to answering the
Hmm.
911 calls, those 2 desks would have those additional tasks to deal with. So and we would have the drop system. So
Hmm.
911 would drop in your ear, non-emergency would drop in the air. So you kind of hear it getting closer, coming around the room. You're like, oh, it's about to hit me.
Oh
Um,
man.
so it looked like that. We had about 4 screens, at that time. Now I work with about 6. But initially when I started, it was 4. And I thought that was like, I don't know. I don't know how I'm gonna do this. I actually remember going through training. So we had like 2 weeks out of our academy where we would
Hmm.
call it hot week, and we go on the floor with the trainer, just taking calls, getting our feet wet before we went full time training on the floor. And I remember my trainer gave me some trauma because I had a priority call. I think it was some kind of weapons call,
Hmm.
and um, you learn to scan because you're dropping info into the call. The radio's asking you questions because you're split on the other side of the room, and I wasn't acknowledging the questions I was getting asked from radio, and they worked me through it, and then after he was just like, "You're not gonna make it." I was like, "What?" And he
Oh.
was like, "If you can't read, the messages coming in, like you're not gonna get through this. You need to do better." And that night, I dreamed that I flunked out and was dispatching at Disneyland, and like
Oh man.
drama. But yeah, there's multiple screens. You know, you got to be able to jump through like different software that's going on depending on your agency. But it was definitely getting used to all those screens. Now I'm just like, oh, there's only one screen. What do I do with this? I don't have enough room.
Right. Yes, exactly. It's like, where's the real estate?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, your agency definitely bigger than the last one that I was at and the one that I started out at. So, I started out in Central Florida, moved back home, Southwest Michigan, and our minimum was 3.
Oh, wow.
Yes, 3 people for the entire county. And I don't know, I think the county that I was working for is like 160,000 people or something like that. I don't know. But either way, we still had a lot of agencies and everything. And sometimes just with the 3, it felt like it was just hell at times.
No, straight up. That's more of a similar situation I am in. I lateraled and we're like 2. We could run it with 2. We would really, really like 3, and it's a different beast. It's a different busy,
Right. Yeah. So you got the best of both worlds then. You had that chance to have all of those people, and then now it's just bam. Just a little bit of you taking everything. So it's do you do every discipline then? Just like fire, EMS, and police?
Just police.
Just
so
police.
in both departments that I've worked for, I've only done police dispatch.
Man. Okay, so taking in calls, or are you like police calls, or are you just law enforcement radio? Just straight up law enforcement radio?
Both. So
Okay.
at my first agency, we're dual trained. Usually spend half the shift on phones and then you switch to radio. My new agency, we're dual trained as well. We switch every 2 hours from radio to phones. So, but there's only 2 of us. If it starts popping, you're doing everything.
Oh, for sure.
911 calls coming in, you're answering the radio. I mean, that's definitely something I learned during this lateral training, was how to multitask in that way and kind of have that split ear, because I didn't have to have it at my last agency, because you're just doing this or you're doing that. Here it's like, no, it's just us. If things start popping off, we're all doing it. So
yeah, it's interesting, right? You find out what you're made of, right? At a certain point, because like you were saying with your ears, I call it dispatch ear. So you have to, might be on the phone answering this emergency, and then you're listening to the person on the radio and sending messages, but also typing into the CAD, and all of this stuff is going on, but also at the same time listening to everything that's going on in the environment of the caller, just in case, you hear a sound like a weapon or something is thrown or anything like that. There's so much that goes into it. I tell people, and they just stare. Like, how do you guys do that? It's like,
yeah,
it's something that you develop.
I don't think we know. We just go.
Right. Yeah.
How do you do that? I'm like, a lot of people ask me, especially when they get through and they're now in training after going through critical and doing all that. Like, how do I get better at this? How do I get better at that? And it's just like, some things, it's just, you got to stumble through it. It's just going to get better. Even me, when I lateraled, there was a little bit of imposter syndrome. I was like, I was at a bigger agency, like this, I know I can do this job. And then you go to train and learn a whole different, luckily we were operating on the same CAD system. So that was beneficial for me, but learning to split ear, learning to work the radio and phones at the same time, learning to get off a phone quicker because there's no one else to answer the phones,
Right.
Like just these little things that you just don't think about until you're in it, having to really learn to adjust those skills that you didn't think were really relative because they didn't apply to you, but now they do. And it's just like, no, I'm a good dispatcher. I got this. I can do this job.
Yeah, and it's overwhelming sometimes, right? When you see, especially for the first time, when you see everyone doing it, and you're just kind of there, and like you said in the beginning, for you, it was the same for me. I remember thinking, am I going to be able to do this? Because the person that I'm looking at right now is calm, cool, and collected. They're taking this phone call. They're typing. They're also yelling across the room to the person on the radio to get them information faster. And they're talking on the radio to EMS or fire. And they're also eating at the same time. So I don't know.
And they're eating like chicken wings, like something they
right.
Eating,
Yeah.
Like just hella finger food, like, how
You're
are you doing that?
you're eating ribs and shit. You're like,
Right?
yeah, we got people headed your way. It's such a crazy job, and but I wouldn't change it. Like it's awesome. It's very rewarding. There is a lot of hard and chaos that comes out of the job, of course, because I mean it's 911. Like we were saying, people aren't calling on their happiest day. They're calling because they're living their own nightmare right now, and we're the ones who are there to help them. And but there is a lot of good that is also there as well. So for you, starting out and everything, was there ever anything overwhelming, or even just like kind of being on the radios? Did you find it hard sometimes when you first started out on radios about what to say? And the reason I say that is because, like, with me, with my trainer, like, I wanted to do so well that even if the response was just like 10-4, I would look at my trainer and be like, that's just a 10-4 response, right? Like, and they would say, yes, just say 10-4. And I would say, I just want to make sure I'm saying it right or doing the right thing. And they would say, if you say something wrong, they're going to laugh at you. Yes, but you're just going to have to own it. This is the way you're going to learn. And, it was fine after that. But I was just curious, like, was there anything like that on radios that you just kind of thought, damn, like, hope I get this?
My radio training experience was wild. I was with like 20-year vets who were just like, I have never seen a bigger shit magnet in my career than you. I mean, I would sit down and the thing about the radio training that I went through is we would do 12-hour radio training. Like when we would first do phones for like months, and then once you're cleared phones, they'll leave you solo on phones for a little while. Then they'll send you through a little radio academy. And then you're on the floor 12 hours a day with your trainer, radio, like until you're off training. And that's a lot of radio. Like now, as someone who likes radio, I'm like, cool, yeah, I'll take it for 12 hours, no biggie. But when you're training, that stuff is exhausting. And my radio was so busy, so full of priority, so much like no units available, need to cross district, sergeant, do you copy? That guy got the gun, their pants are off, and there's a fire back there that someone started. Where you want to go first? And it was just so hectic that I just had to go. And I didn't even have time to think about messing up because it was just so jam-packed busy that I'm sure I messed up, said stuff over the air, but you're just going like from one thing to another. You don't even remember until you look at your like DOR. You're like, oh, oh yeah, like we don't even got time to debrief right now. We gotta wait till I read whatever they put at the end of my shift onto that.
Oh man, yeah, those are moments that when it's so hectic, like you describe, one of two things happens. You look at the clock and you think, oh man, it's almost time for me to go home. Or you look at the clock and you're like, oh man, it's only been 30 minutes. Like, are you serious? Like, it feels like we've been here for 10 days already. What is going on?
2.5 minutes have passed and I've already, saved the world several times.
Right.
What is happening?
and you're drained. You're like, it's almost time to go, right? Like, you just got here. Oh, yeah. Well, okay. Let's continue.
Next call.
yeah, I'll go to the next one. So, speaking of calls, do you remember some of your first ones? Like either the first one or like some that were early on?
Again, we had an actual full-on academy. So I was pretty lucky. We had a classroom setting. We went 2 weeks on the floor with the trainer, back into the classroom, and then onto the floor for training. And I was actually a pre-hire. So for about 3 months, I was just taking like tows, alarms, and repos. So I had to jump on my academy mates with kind of knowing the system, knowing a little bit how it worked, understanding Vesta. And one of the days in my academy, our teacher was like, okay, I'm gonna take you guys out one by one. We're gonna show you Vesta. We're gonna show you on the floor. And I was like, oh, okay. So I had a working knowledge of Vesta. Like it's not that intricate. It's a bunch of buttons when you call, where you get your 911 calls from. And then time kept passing, and I was like, they're looking at Vesta for a long time. Like, why is it taking so long to look at Vesta?
Mhm.
And then I go out, it's my turn, and then she's telling me, oh, this Vesta, da da da, okay, yeah. And she was like, okay, here's a headset, we're gonna take calls. And I'm like, I need to go to the bathroom. She was just like, what? I was like, first and foremost, I'm not prepared for this. You didn't tell me I was answering 911 today. She was like, well, we're throwing on you guys. So when you go into training next week, you're not all scared little does, you'll have your first 911 call under you. I was like, no, I don't. I gotta go. We gotta huddle. We gotta take a time out here. And I think my first call, if I can remember correctly, I think it ended up being a good little 211. So I was like,
so for those who don't know, what does that stand for?
Armed robbery.
Oh, no way.
Or forced or fear. Robbed by force or fear. So
damn, dude.
and I was like 911. They have a gun. I'm like looking at her like, you did this to us. This is your fault. We could have been in the classroom right now, chilling.
For real, yeah. That's a straight up dispatch guys being welcome to dispatch.
Yeah. Now you will never leave.
Right. After this experience, you're in. You're gonna stay. Oh man, yeah. I can't imagine. Yeah, going in and just thinking
just the disrespect. I was like, we spent 3 months together before these people. Like, this is, you could have told me, winked something.
Right. Yes.
No
But
love. No love.
they were trying to make sure you weren't freaking out in the room the whole time.
Yeah, try to make sure I don't dispatch at Disneyland, like I feel it. I appreciate it.
Oh man. Yeah, that reminds me of when I very first started dispatching. The first night I was there, I had applied and it had been 2 months and I thought, well, I didn't get the job or anything. And the chief of police shows up at my house and he asks me if I want the job. And well, I will say at first, my grandmother, who spoke only Spanish, was yelling at me in Spanish saying that the police were there. And she was like, what did you do? And I was like, I didn't do anything. And she goes, well, you better get out there and go look. And she very sweet. I love my grandmother to death. She passed away back in 2007, but if you got on that other side, man, she'd throw that chancla at you and
she opened the door. He's right here, officer.
Right.
No, you don't need a warrant.
Yeah.
You just come in here and get
Yeah.
out. You
Exactly.
did it. I don't think you did it.
With a willow switch, just like get out there. So I went out there and then she asked me if I wanted the job and I said yes. And he goes, well, you start tonight. And I thought, holy hell, that's not what I was expecting, was to start tonight already. And I go in.
Staffing setup.
Yeah, exactly. And I go in and I meet my trainer, who I'll simply say he was a very seasoned dispatcher. And and I watched him. I observed him take his first or the first 911 call that I was there. And then after he was done, he turned around and he says, it's your turn. And I right? Yeah. So I thought it was
no notes, no.
Yeah, nothing.
Nothing to read.
Yes, nothing. And I remember asking him if he was joking, and he just like dead stare, and he's like, no, I'm not joking. He goes, you're never going to learn how to do this unless you start taking these calls. And I said, but there's got to be more to this. I said, there's really nothing else. And he goes, yeah. And he goes, look, what it takes to do this job is first and foremost being human, common sense, and you got to grow some thick skin. And I was like, okay. And that first call luckily was a misdial. But dude, I was sweating like it was horrible. Like my heart was just
I couldn't imagine.
Yeah, it was bad, but it was still good because it also allowed me to learn, I don't know, just so many other things. And then later on, I ended up taking a beginner's 40-hour dispatcher course. So it ended up being okay. So then, you go through that training, you have those, those first calls and everything that are coming in and stuff. And, you've been doing this for 4 years and all, but going through all of it and just learning everything that you've been learning, like what kind of pushed you to, I guess, really start, I guess in the beginning, developing what it is that you're doing now? Because I can only imagine, and I ask this because there's a lot of folks that I've spoken to have said, just, for example, they were a CTO, they're a trainer now. But
Mhm.
in the beginning, they were telling me a story about how either the trainer was amazing and they wanted to pass on that knowledge, or the trainer wasn't that great and they wanted to make sure that the new folks that were coming in would not have that same experience. So it kind of motivated them to
Mhm.
do different things. So like for you, I guess what has been a lot of your motivation, especially with this job? Because as we said, it gets into your blood.
Mhm.
And, a lot of folks love the front line and they'll be the front line, but there's others that want to move up and be supervisors, but or also kind of branch out, whether it be public education or whichever, but also combined with working the front lines. What was it for you?
I think I had a very fortunate experience with my original department
Hmm.
and the training staff and the academy. That it was just such a good experience, like getting into the field, learning about dispatch, seeing our impact. I never had a trainer who um, I felt was mean or
Hmm.
uh, trying to make an example of me or anything like that. I had really good experiences throughout uh, my journey getting into this career, um, that I felt that we just need more dispatchers.
Hmm.
And if more people have a positive experience um, to start, at the start of their career, through their application process, getting into their departments, that we're going to slowly take away that dispatch shortage. Um, and from my positive experience, I just wanted to help people have a positive experience at least through that initial process, and eventually community building, for us, like, things that you're doing, I want to be like you when I grow up, Ricardo. You know, and just
Yay.
just create this atmosphere where it's so cool to be a dispatcher.
Hmm.
It's a great job, and we're helping each other through it rather than creating this like, you gotta be able to balance 400 things at once in order to be a good dispatcher. So I think having that initial really good experience coming in made me want to give that in some way, shape, or form to other folks who are interested in this career.
That's awesome because I remember when I first started out in the last center that I was in. And don't get me wrong, for those who are listening and those in my old center, if you're listening as well, I love all of you. But when I first started out, like no one talked to me. There was nobody
Yeah.
talking to me. And I remember feeling, isolated almost like,
Hmm.
oh, do these people really not want me here? Or because me thinking about public safety and us being first responders and everything else, immediately I went in with this family mentality. So, I'm expecting to like come in and people be like, hey, welcome to the team or whatever. That shit did not happen. My first shift at the last center that I was at, again, I was starting out midnight shift and it was a 1A to 5A shift. I was only in there for 4 hours. And I remember they asked, they're like, do you want to come in for this shift? Because this is when you'll get to meet your trainer and you'll actually be able to have some time.
Hmm.
And I said, well, yeah, I mean, this is the job I want to do. And I signed up. I'm here for it. So I'll do it. So I came in for that 1A to 5A. And I walk in, and of course, I mean, it's 1 a.m. So it could have been the people were just tired as shit. But, but still,
They hopped up on caffeine. Don't
no,
they?
well, yeah, that's true. Yeah. I was trying to ease the blow for myself. but but like for me, like whenever someone would come in that was new, I'd be like, hey, what's going on? Welcome,
Yeah.
this or that. But of course, not everybody is the same. But
Hmm.
I went in kind of with that thought of, oh, these people are going to welcome me in and everything is going to be good to go. And then the very first call I hear was like, what? Because the call volume was a lot different at this central dispatch than this little tiny police department that I was working at. So even the calls were kind of different because it wasn't a big town.
Yeah.
But you know, this first call, I'm on the umbilical cord listening listening with my trainer, and it's this guy calling saying that he saw what he thought was an animal that was crawling on the side of the road, and was going to call for an officer to come and to basically put it down, you know, because he thought it was a deer or something. But it was a person.
Oh.
It was a person who was the person was crawling on the side of the road, and what had happened was the person just didn't want to live anymore, and they had a shotgun, but they missed.
Oh, wow.
And like the person's jaw was just kind of hanging. So I'm listening to this, and I remember my trainer just kind of turns and looks at me, and she was trying to mouth something, and I couldn't tell what she was saying. And then finally she goes like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine." You know, I already have like 4 years of experience listening to some of this stuff. So then when we get off the phone, though, she asked again. She goes, "Are you staying?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm here for like 4 hours." I was like, it's not the first time I've heard something like this. So, you know, we're good to go. But, you know, that rest of that time, people didn't talk to me. So in the beginning, during training and stuff, it was hard for me because I almost quit. I almost quit working there because of that environment. And I remember one of the girls that worked there, she was a girl that I actually grew up with and we went to school with. So it was funny that years later, her and I would be working in dispatch together for so long. And she's still there too. But I remember telling her, dude, I think I'm going to quit, man. It's like this, nobody is talking to me. Like, this is not what I thought it was going to be. And I remember her saying, just hang in there. This is the way they do this. They want you to just be with your trainer. And then the last phase, the shadow phase, that's when we do everything as a team. And I remember telling her, well, you guys need to change this shit because this is, if I feel like this, how many people have you had come in and go before me? And she just kind of chuckled. And I was like, yeah, like that's the thing.
It really is, especially at smaller agencies. You know, I definitely I went from a bigger agency, you know, there's 10 plus people, you know, there's 3 to a pod, or, you know, in between calls, we're talking. And then you go to a smaller agency and it's just you and one other person in the room. And it's hit or miss, right? Like you guys can have a really good relationship or you could just be coworkers and that's all good and dandy, you know, but we still are responsible for the atmosphere we're creating in a job that's already hard enough. And, you know, we don't have to be best friends, but we definitely should be cordial. We definitely should be helpful during our work day, or else it makes for a really, really long shift. Because especially with entry levels, it's already so overwhelming. Like as a lateral, I've already done this. I've taken every type of call imaginable, and coming to a smaller agency and having less high priority calls come in, kind of more reflective of the area that I'm dispatching in, and kind of like, why are you calling me type of calls. You kind of lean more on your coworker to get you through the night, because the night's longer, in the sense that we're not going call to call in the same way we would maybe at a bigger agency with even higher crime rates, you know. So that other person in the room, you know, we are responsible for those atmospheres, and we should really do our best. And we're not perfect. We're all human. We're all going to have those days. But we should definitely do the best to keep that air clear and helpful and pleasant during a long shift.
Yes, exactly. And things have changed there. I think after me, there was a lot of stuff there's a lot of stuff that changed. And the girl that I mentioned, my good friend, she's the training coordinator now. And she's been the training coordinator for a while, even when I was there, I think it was the last couple of years. So like from 2011, maybe on, she ended up becoming the training coordinator, and things were completely different. And I think that was, kind of one of the examples that they ended up using was to, engage more and have more of that team atmosphere. Because I understood what they were doing. They wanted the trainer and I to be just us, and me basically be kind of like a barnacle to to the trainer, or vice versa, and not have any other influence. But it's that team atmosphere, building that camaraderie that you end up getting into, that we're going to have anyway. You might as well start it, even if it's just little bits here and there, kind of sprinkle it in.
Yeah, and sometimes your trainer gonna get on your nerves. you gotta
Right.
want someone else to
Yes.
to parlay with, because the trainer is literally, the job is to critique you for a 12-hour shift. You could be doing amazing, but their job is to literally find the things and fix them. And that's challenging. Like, taking us as people, like taking critiques is hard, especially for 12 hours, especially if you're lateraling in. Like, I know how to do this job, but there's always something you can learn. There's always, like, even now when I'm sitting in a room with just another person, I'm overhearing their calls, and even the way they ask a question, I'm like, oh, that's a good way to ask that. I'm going to ask it that, like that. Like, you could always learn something.
Yes.
But when you're going through training, sometimes you get tired of learning stuff, and
right.
you need other people to not be teaching you. You know what I mean? So if we don't have those little moments with other people, we don't have that release either. So I think it's definitely important to have that team atmosphere from the jump.
Oh yes. No, I fully agree on that. So I have a question, and I think this is the first time out of 440 whatever I said episodes that I'm asking
special.
this. Yes. Have you ever kind of spoken a call into existence? In the reason I asked, so I'll give you an example, and then you can tell me if you've had something similar. So my very, very last shift, I worked a 1P to 1A shift.
Okay.
And I did that because I was like, well, I'm going to get out early, because usually it was 4:30 to 4:30. And I thought, no, I'm going to work the mids so that I can work 4 hours with the morning team and the morning shift, and then my team at night. Well, the person who was going to relieve me, she got sick, and it was my duty as a supervisor to go down the force-in list to see who wanted to come in for overtime, and I volunteered for it because it was my team. It was my last day.
Downhill from there.
in true dispatch form, I might as well take the 16-hour shift and just do it, which I did. So I ended up moving from phones to radios. And I'm sitting there, and there's not a lot of time left of the shift, and I'm already getting antsy. I'm getting just slightly emotional because I know I'm going to do my final call and stuff over my final traffic, and I'm trying to think of what to say. And I look at my partner, Whitney, and who now, by the way, is the deputy director of the center that I used to work at, which is awesome. And I looked at her, and I was talking to her and the other other team member there. Her name was Jill. And I said, I hope I don't jinx myself, but it probably won't happen because it's very, very short time before this ends. I said, I have never, ever taken a medical where I have to translate in Spanish. And I started laughing, and they were laughing, and shit you not, there was just a few minutes left. I'm getting ready to do my last traffic, and the phone rings. And I remember like pucker factor. I was like, no. And then I hear, un momento. I was like, what? And Whitney, who's next to me, starts laughing, and I thought, hell no, like this is not happening. And I hear the phone click, and I was like, oh, okay, she was messing with me. And Jill goes, Ricardo. I was like, oh wait. And I looked down, and the phone is blinking. I was like, she just put him on hold. I was like, shit. And I said, what? And she goes, I don't know what this is, but you need to translate in Spanish. I was like, hell no. I said, are you messing with me? And she goes, no. And I said, okay. So I picked up the phone. It was a medical. It was a medical, and I had to translate in Spanish. This dude, and it was at a friend's house. Didn't know the address, didn't even really know the area. He knew the name of the city, which luckily it was on the side of the county and in an area that I knew like the back of my hand because I grew up in the area. And all of his friends were drunk off their asses and passed out. And he was trashed as well, but he was having chest pain, couldn't breathe that well. We ended up getting everybody out there. He was just having a panic attack is all it was. They didn't transport him or anything, but I spoke it into existence, man. It's like saying the Q word and just tempting fate.
Yeah, no, definitely nothing that specific.
Yeah.
But I do recall I came in, I actually lived like right around the corner from my comm center in Sacramento. And so I always told my supervisor, like, I'll put on pants for overtime. Just call me. I'll come right around. No biggie. You can pay me double. I'll put some pants on. So I'd worked these like weird, like 2-hour shifts because I was so close. So I'd always cover for my coworkers, help them out, those little shifts that no one would come in for because they're not going to drive 2 hours to work 2 hours. I'll put pants on to come around the corner for 2 hours. I'll do that. So I was working, I think it was like, well, I got off at like 4 a.m. and I think I was there for like 4 hours. Like, and it was like 10 minutes left in the shift. And at that point you can kind of sign off and, start. So I'm like packing up and I'm about to go not ready and start shutting all my stuff down. And then non-emergency starts ringing. I was like, this will be my last gift to the citizens of Sacramento. This will be it. It's not an emergency. I'll just handle this real quick before I sign off. And I pick it up. And this lady, she's like, yeah, mind you, it's not an emergency. So I'm like, I'm not elevated because it's not an emergency. And she's like, it's really weird. I'm just getting back to my place. My ex-boyfriend's car's in my parking lot of my apartment. I don't see them. But it's freaking me out. And I was like, okay, have you guys lived together? She's like, no, I moved into this place by myself. Like, he's never lived here, never stayed here. Like, there's no reason his car should be here. And I was like, okay. And I'm like, just typing the info. Like, she hasn't seen him. There's really, it's kind of like, well, what do you want us to do? You want us to come out and do an area check? What do you want? And she's like, okay, I'm going to walk into my apartment. She doesn't really warn me. She just kind of goes, like, I'm at my apartment now. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, and I'm like at this point, I'm like chilling, like, all right, she's going to get into her apartment. It's going to be all good. I'm going to leave, ask her if she wants to report, whatever. So I'm sitting there and she like opens the door and I can hear her open the door and it's like scary movie silence, right? And I can hear her kind of shuffling and then she just screams, like blood curdling scream. And I'm like, sitting up now, I'm like, what's going on? Like what happened?
Yeah.
But I already have the call pretty much dropped. And she's like, he's in here. So I drop the call, update it, like, he's in the house. And we just start going. And you can hear her like running and like, and I'm like, well, where is he? And she's like, he was in the bathroom. And she's like ducking in between cars. And, we get there, he's gone. But it's like, this was my last call for this little overtime shift, non-emergency, and all of a sudden we got a guy scaling into a apartment that he's never been in, and she was like second floor balcony, like, how'd you do it, sir? And then she's running through, hiding between cars. It's just like I was just trying to not give someone else a call.
Right.
And it just escalates. It escalates so quickly, and that is dispatch. I mean, that is completely dispatch.
Damn.
Yeah.
Oh, so you got Spider-Man getting up in there and then Mary Jane trying to run.
Right. Just between cars. And she was like, he's calling me. I was like, don't answer. Just stay on the phone with me. He could have called you before he went into your house. So he didn't do that.
Right. Yeah. So, okay. So that is crazy, right? And for those who are listening and watching this as well, especially those who are in the general public, so we're calm, right? And we're cool going through a call like this. However, in the back of our minds, what are you feeling as this is going on? Because I got goosebumps listening to you
Oh yeah,
about this,
no.
and I remember calls like that where people would, this lady, her neighbor one time, she was like, he's just walking around and stuff, and she turned around, she's with her granddaughter, she turns around and the dude is standing right inside, and it was
Oh
kind of
wow.
the same like with you, that the screams, and then you're typing harder and
Yeah.
faster, and then everyone else in the room can hear you, and they're like, oh
Yeah.
shit. So like, right, so for like
No,
you,
legit.
you're taking this call, and you have to kind of navigate the caller of where to
Mhm.
go, but also where are you, and you said the person was like trying to hide behind cars, right?
She like took off, ran, tried to hide behind cars. And it's just like, once your adrenaline starts going, like you said, you just start like typing, because
Yeah.
that's your superpower, right? The quicker I can get out information, the more accurate information I can get out
Hmm.
is going to be the most helpful to my officers, to medics, whoever's responding, no matter what kind of situation. So I have to stay calm so I can get the most accurate information out of them, because one thing I've learned is no one knows their directions, right? Like no one knows east west where I'm at, so you
Right.
got to be really good at like pulling landmarks out of people and like things that you wouldn't necessarily use to describe areas. You got to be really calm and be able to get people to calm down as well, so we can get that accurate information. Unfortunately, we were there pretty quick. I want to say we were there within like 5 minutes, but once she left, he obviously left,
Hmm.
and we weren't able to locate him. But it could have escalated even more. I mean, someone being in your house, especially someone you don't want in your house, is already an escalation.
Right.
And imagine if she had gone deeper into the home before realizing, you know what I mean? I mean, it could just continue to branch
Right.
off and escalate, and you just never know.
Yeah, you could have heard the phone drop, and then you're just listening in
Mhm.
the background. You're just
Yeah.
typing out, phone just fell, listening to rustling in the background, and then that's all you
Sounds
can do.
physical, like, that's literally all you can do, yeah.
Yeah, it's all you can do is listen, and
Yeah.
sometimes it's the most helpless feeling
Mhm.
because you're listening to it, and then depending
Mhm.
on how the call goes, or even if it has a good outcome, just that little
Mhm.
part where it hits, peak, you could be driving home, and that is replaying in your head, and you're like,
Oh,
"Damn."
yeah, that night, I went home and I was I'm pretty we're in this field, we hear all the stuff, so I think for the most part, dispatchers are pretty, aware of
Yeah.
surroundings and aware, but that night, I think I triple checked all my doors, windows, like, 4 or 5 times, like,
Oh,
no
dude, I
one
would have been
I
too.
didn't have anyone, but it was just like, I remember she was yelling, and I just, I double, triple checked that night for sure, just
Oh,
because of that call.
yeah. So here's the question then, because you say that,
Yeah.
how has this job changed you? I mean, you've been doing it for 4 years, but still, in those 4 years, there's a lot that can change.
You know, nothing. Well, one of the things I do tell people a
Mhm.
lot is like, I learned after doing this job is there are a lot more naked people in the world than we are aware of. Like, just
Yes.
there are like good for them. Like, get out there, body confidence. I'm all for it. But there are a lot more naked people out there than we know to be true. I mean, that's one of the biggest things I've come to realize. And then just like you never know. Like there's so much going on in even in your small town
Mhm.
areas that no one's aware of and no one's going to experience. I tell my partner all the time, like there's a lot of I respond ways because I hear a lot of the like really bad stuff. I've
Mhm.
heard a lot of the worst that we people do to each other. Um, and with that awareness, I move differently. I make different decisions. I'm, more aware of the people that I let around me, because you never know. And that I think this job kind of it makes you aware, but you also have to be aware yourself not to let that put you in a big box. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
I can't allow the evils of the world to not let me go outside and get some fresh air, you know? Um, so I think it's definitely changed me in the sense that I know to look left, look right, and behind, before I go do something. But I also understand that from bad things come good things as well,
Right.
and people overcome. And I've talked to domestic violence victims multiple times, but then I've also talked to domestic violence victims who are no longer victims, and they're reclaiming their space, and they're reclaiming their safety. They're calling us not in a response because they had that person over, but because they're not allowing that person in anymore. So
Right.
we also get to see the growth, that unfortunately sometimes the trauma people experience, we also get to see the growth as well, which is, I think, not everyone sees in their line of work every day, right? So
Yeah, it's one of the amazing things to be able to see, like you said, that growth after getting so many calls and everything else, and then, you know, maybe you see them outside. They don't know who you are, but you see them and they're thriving,
yeah.
and that's a really good thing. Or also, for those who end up taking calls that end up getting those thank yous, or meeting those folks that they help, that's another part of that growth as well, but also within you to see that what it is that you're doing does make a difference, that there is some
Mhm.
change, that there is a way that you're impacting someone's life, and also we're impacting lives that we will never know that
Yeah.
we've impacted. And we just keep doing what we do, man. It's
Mhm.
those are the good parts. Those are definitely
Yeah.
the good parts that I love so much about the job.
No, definitely. It is really, it's a really rewarding part of it all, for sure.
Now, I want to segue here
Mhm.
into what it is you're doing now. Now tell me, is this a passion project? Is this how would you describe it? How about that? The Raspy Dispatcher. Tell me about it. How did this come about, and what it is that you're doing, and just all of it.
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, it's so fluid. And which is one of the things that I really enjoy about it is I think I have 1,000 ideas in my head, right? And which is great because I can do all these things.
Mhm.
I have the passion, the knowledge, and the opportunity to bring all these things to fruition. And because of that, it's constantly changing. And it initially really started with I was like blogging, and then I was like, I went to school for X amount of years. I'm tired of writing. I don't really want to write anymore. And then it kind of turned into a YouTube channel. And then I was like, okay, I want to talk about dispatch. I want to get the word out there. It's a really great time to be a dispatcher.
Mhm.
What would have benefited me when going into trying to get into this career, trying to find information? And that's kind of when the critical stuff came about. And I was like, well, critical was really big. Um, and even if you're not in California, we have Post. And even if it looks different, the as far as what the test is called, the fundamental skills are kind of the same. I have to be able to, do phonetics. I have to be able to type and listen. I have to be able to look and type. All those things are beneficial for people getting into this career. So, how do I put information out there that is helpful for someone really looking to see how to pass? I've decided I want to do this. What are the skills that I need to improve so I can get through any testing process that an agency has? And then more importantly, what does this job actually look like? And is that something that's going to be beneficial in my life? Shift work, forced mandatory time, working holidays, training, how we go from day shift, night shift, swings, all throughout our training before we have a set schedule. Those things are realities of the job. And if we don't have real conversations with ourselves that we're going to enjoy that lifestyle, then our turnover is just going to continue, right? And I'm
Right.
wasting my time, I'm wasting this department's time. And I just wanted to create space to really have honest conversations about the good and the challenging of being a dispatcher. Um, so that's kind of kind of how the Raspy Dispatcher continues to develop and just being a dynamic and affordable resource for aspiring 911 dispatchers, and eventually, continued education for current dispatchers and things of that nature is kind of what I wanted to grow into.
Oh man, that is awesome. Especially, when it's always good to hear this, especially when you have folks like yourself who are completely throwing yourself into it. You've got, like you said, you've got the experience. So when you make things personal, put yourself into it, that's when people, they want to learn more, right? They want to listen more. They want to know what it is that you're doing, but also how it can help them as well. Because then now we're relating and we're all just this big family and stuff. And we're out there putting that information out there. There was a long time where nobody was talking about dispatch. Like there you didn't really know about it. And like for me, when I started doing this back in 2010, all of this started as a college project. It was in 2010, and it was because I would go to get my hair cut, and they would ask me, "What do you do for a living?" And I would think, do I tell them?
Right. You gotta have to have a story locked,
Right. Yes. You gotta have it locked and loaded for, well, no pun intended, for for this line of work. And then you tell them, and then of course the question is, well, what is the craziest call?
Right.
Or what's the funniest call? And in the beginning, I'll admit it got annoying, but I think it was annoying only because I was going through a burnout during that time. So when I went back to school and I rekindled that passion, like I loved what I was doing. I was still doing it, really good and everything. It's just, it was a toxic environment with, morale being down, just overtime like crazy, getting forced in like a week before the shift was even supposed to happen. Like that's how short staffed we were. And then you add in county politics and it's just an explosion, man. And it ended up just switching that mindset to, there's no reason for me to be getting annoyed. Let's turn this into public education. And it's been going and going ever since, with a lot of us that are even more so now letting people know what this is like. And for you, just telling, like you said, aspiring dispatchers, this is what it's like. This is this type of test. This is what you can do. And, just the content that you're developing, you're giving that experience. And that is what we want people to have, right? So that when they're getting into it, one, they know what they're getting into, and two, so that they know if this is something that they want to do. Because like you said, you don't want to be wasting time, because that's also money and resources and other people getting forced in and, all this other types of shit. So I commend you. Well done. This is good stuff. It is really good to be able to do that and, put your experience behind it. Because again, that's how we relate to each other. And that's how it works. We're human. We connect that way.
Yeah, no, it's super rewarding to people, message me and I'm applying for this, and oh, I got to go in for critical. Oh, I have my panel interview now. Okay, I got psych coming up. I'm in backgrounds, all the way through to hey, I'm a dispatcher now. Getting that message and receiving thank yous from folks who felt that the channel helped them and my advice helped them, or it's super rewarding. And it's so validating that it's working. That with every message that I receive, that's, hey, I'm employed, I'm in training. It's like that dispatch center is now one less short, a person.
Right.
And that's the goal, because the world needs more dispatchers. We need it. And any way that I can create resources, videos, trainings that can help with that, that's what I'm going to do.
That's amazing. Looking back on the time that you've been doing all of this, and not just what you're doing now with the Raspy Dispatcher, but these 4 years, reflecting on the 4 years that you've had, with everything that you know so far, that you've learned, your experience, all of it. If you could go back in time to when you first started, what advice would you give yourself? What would you say? Especially if there was anything that, you were overwhelmed with or anything like that, what would you go back and just kind of tell yourself?
I think I would definitely have a really straightforward conversation with myself, uh, reminding myself to give myself grace. That you're gonna mess up. I mean,
Mhm.
it obviously weighs a little more heavy because when you mess up in this line of work, it has the potential to have bigger consequences, right? So, of course, we want to do well 100% of the time, but we have to give ourselves grace to learn to be dispatchers. And even on those overwhelming days, those hard days, um, you have to be able to really communicate with those who are training you when you need that space, when you need that moment, when you need to take that breath. And I'm a former college athlete. There's no quit. There's no, so I have that kind of mentality where, we keep running uphill even though we can't breathe type of thing.
Yeah.
And, we have to allow ourselves space to recover, um, to really reflect on the things we learn, and really having that confidence in the beginning, having that conversation with whoever my supervisor is, my trainer is, like having that plan put in place before it escalates to that type of situation, I think would have been really helpful. Because I think we talked about it, we brushed over it. But for me, I was like, I'll be fine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there were moments, especially in radio training, where it was overwhelming. And though I was very close with my radio trainer, I still didn't have that language to ask for that space. Now I got it. But when you're training, we don't want to look weak. We don't want to look like we can't handle the job. We don't want to look human. And that's the biggest part of this job, is being human. So I think creating those spaces to give yourself that grace from the jump with whatever line of CTO, supervisor, chain that you're going in is super important, to longevity in this line of work.
Awesome. Perfectly said. Well done.
Hey.
Oh, this was great. This was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast. I'm so happy that we're finally able to do this. For anyone who wants to learn more about everything that you're doing, how can they find you? Social
Yes.
media, website, email, all of that good stuff.
Yeah, so of course we're on YouTube, the Raspy Dispatcher. Pretty much all the social handles are the Raspy Dispatcher.
Mhm.
Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, like I said, YouTube, and we do have a website, theraspydispatcher.com. And there you can find all of our contacts, emails. And yeah, I respond as quickly as I can, DMs, emails, YouTube comments, all that. I try to be pretty available for folks. So definitely like, follow, subscribe, hit me up. Any questions, I will do my best to answer them.
Awesome. Again, thank you so much for being on, and
Thank you for having me.
this has been awesome. I'm going to be back with you here in just 1 second. And for those who are watching, if you have any comments, questions, or you want to be a guest on the show, you can email us, and that's going to be wttpodcast@gmail.com. Once again, that is wttpodcast@gmail.com. And you can follow us on Twitter. That is @91podcast. You can like us on Facebook. That is facebook.com/Within the Trenches podcast. This episode has been sponsored by In Digital, as well as Rapid Deploy and Carbine. And if you're looking for any bonus content and you want to help support us, you can check us out. And that's going to be patreon.com/WTT podcast. A special perk for patrons only are audio versions of the DRT, as well as open mic live. And you've got Singing Badly in My Car, discounts to the store, swag, t-shirts, all that good stuff. So again, patreon.com/WTT podcast, and shout out as always to patrons. Thank you so very much. This can be seen on Facebook, YouTube, as well as Twitter. And then you can listen 24/7 on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. Have a good one, everyone. And we'll see you in the next one.